Welcome to The Source, where we combine the headlines with in-depth conversations with the newsmakers themselves. I'm Pinky Webb. Today on the program, the government files a diplomatic protest against China for its new law allowing its Coast Guard to fire at foreign vessels. Foreign Affairs Secretary Teddy Boy Locsin says the Chinese survey vessel, which recently sought shelter in the waters off Catanduanes, never intruded. And we get to know the status of Philippine-China negotiations on COVID-19 vaccines. Live and exclusive, Chinese ambassador to the Philippines, Huang Xilian, joins us in the program. Vaccine czar Carlito Galvez says that China is ready to deliver its promised donation of 500,000 doses of COVID-19 vaccines once it gets the emergency use authorization from the Food and Drug Administration, or FDA. Apart from the donation, the first batch of Sinovac vaccines is also expected to arrive this month. The government is set to purchase 25 million doses of Chinese-made vaccine Sinovac this year. And can the Philippines expect more aid from China in its COVID-19 vaccination plan? Let's go straight to the source of the story. We have Chinese ambassador to the Philippines, Huang Xilian. Ambassador, welcome back to the source and thank you for your time.
Good morning, Pinky. Good to see you again, and happy to be on this program again. Thank you for having me.
Ambassador, can you first please tell us the status of the 500,000 vaccines that China will donate to the Philippines?
Thank you for your question. Yes, during the visit of our State Councilor and Foreign Minister Wang Yi to the Philippines, he has offered to donate 500,000 doses of Chinese vaccine to the Philippines. And we are now consulting in a very close consultation with the authorities concerned of the Philippines. And once the EUA is approved, we are ready to airlift all the vaccines, to this country anytime.
And what brand are you going to be donating?
We are still consulting your authority concern. I think that's only by then, when we have the opinion from your government, we can decide what kind of vaccine will be donated.
I believe, though, Ambassador, that Secretary Galvez had earlier said that the vaccines that will be donated will be Sinovac vaccines.
Yeah, I also read the reports, but we are still waiting for the confirmation from your government, and we are okay with what kind of vaccine, but there is a condition that it has to be, the EUA has to be approved.
Absolutely. The FDA was saying that at any time, the decision on Sinovac could be, the decision on that could come out any time because there was a commitment of about 50,000 Sinovac vaccines on February 20, and that would be about 2 weeks from now. But I still wanted to get to the options available for the Philippines in terms of the donation coming from China. Are there just possibly 2 vaccines that will be donated, namely Sinovac and Sinopharm? Or what have you committed? What China committed in terms of brand to the Philippines?
As I said just now, that we are okay with both, and we are still consulting your government for the details. And I think that's any indication from the government regarding the brand of the vaccine was very important for us. And we are prepared to airlift any time when it is prepared.
Ambassador, when you say you are ready to airlift at any time, obviously after the approval, when rather the FDA approves the EUA of the vaccine, will this come in one batch or 2 batches? What kind of logistics can we expect?
Yeah, it's yet to be decided through a consultation. But of course, personally, I rather to provide it in one batch instead of two batches.
Let's talk about the Philippine Senate looking into the vaccination program of the country. I'm not certain if you were following this, but of course, there were 3 days of hearings on that. It was the Senate Committee of the Whole, and they looked into, well, the controversy surrounding Sinovac in terms of price, in terms of efficacy, and of course the non-disclosure agreement, to which somehow, Ambassador, this was somehow resolved. I just wanted to get your reaction. What were your thoughts during that Senate inquiry, if any?
Yes, I followed the Senate hearing on vaccines, and I think that's I don't want to comment on the work of the Senate. This is domestic affairs of the Philippines. What I want to say is that the security of vaccine, of course, will be always on the top of the concerns, and every country, attached great importance to the security of and efficacy of vaccines. And it is the Chinese government which also has a very strict and very rigorous, protocols and policies about the security of vaccine. And of course, we hope that everybody has the right to express some kind of the pose questions on the any type of the vaccine. And but what I want to say is that we need to respect the conclusion and the advice from the experts and scientists. And before any conclusion, made by the scientists and experts, we don't hope to have any speculations and sometimes, the over interpretations.
How do you view this seeming low confidence on vaccines coming from China?
That's as I said, that we have, that kind of lot of measures to ensure the safety and efficacy of the vaccines through scientific, research and clinical trials. And so far, the Chinese vaccine has been, has conducted clinical trial in many countries. And the data have shown that the security, safety, and efficacy has been quite good. And also to share with you, that either Sinovac or Sinopharm vaccines have been used in China for mass vaccination. So far, more than 30 million people in China have been vaccinated across many countries in China. And so far, there is no report of severe adverse impact of those vaccines. So we are very confident in the China vaccines. And as we understand, for more than 10 countries who are importing vaccines from China, that's with the situation also is, as we understand, that EOS is also doing quite well over there.
Of course, the Sinovac, you have the Indonesian president already being vaccinated with the Sinovac. This is also being used in, I believe, Brazil, Turkey, and there are some orders as well. I'm not sure if it's Sinovac or Sinopharm in Saudi Arabia. Let's just quickly talk about, Ambassador, this issue on what is called vaccine diplomacy. Some view the vaccine donation as a move to expand Chinese influence in the Philippines. Can we get your reaction to that?
I think that's maybe your foreign secretary has the biggest say in this regard. I remember that he ever tweeted that I know China is a pushing its vaccines as part of its diplomacy, as its lying enemies insist. China needs as many of its vaccines for its own people. So I think he speaks for that already, and I believe that that people can judge objectively on this topic.
Ambassador, we need to talk about this new Chinese law. It has become very controversial, but we need to take a very short break. This is The Source on CNN Philippines. Please stay tuned. You're watching The Source on CNN Philippines. Our guest today, Chinese Ambassador to the Philippines, Huang Xilian. Ambassador, I hope you don't mind. I have one last question regarding this vaccine before we go to the new Chinese law. After and when China donates that 500,000 vaccines to the Philippines, are there talks or a possibility that another batch of donation may be in the offing?
At the moment, I think we better focus on the supply of the 500,000 doses so that they can benefit the people in the Philippines as soon as possible. And of course, we will discuss further in the future, say not only through bilateral, but also through a multilateral channel. We are doing donation, to developing countries. Say, China has pledged to donate 10 million doses of vaccine through COVAX channel, and Philippines is a member of the COVAX. I believe that Philippines will be also a beneficiary of the donation of Chinese vaccines.
This new Chinese law, Ambassador, that authorizes your Coast Guard to fire upon foreign vessels entering contested waters in the South China Sea. This took effect February 1, 5 days ago, and a diplomatic protest has actually been filed by the DFA on this, saying this could be seen as a verbal threat of war. Is it?
Pardon me?
This could be seen as a verbal threat of war. Is it, Ambassador, a verbal threat of war?
I think that's the Coast Guard War. Coast Guard War is, the Coast Guard of China is the administrative law enforcing agency in China. And enacting such a Coast Guard law is very internal kind of activity, legislation activity. And not only China, there are many countries in this world who have already enacted such Coast Guard laws, including many countries in this region. And for such activity, I think that it shouldn't be seen as anything new, threats, since we also have not seen the enacting of the Coast Guard War of any country as such a threat.
I looked into the Coast Guard law of the Philippines, but there was no such thing in its functions under this Coast Guard law of what is said in your law, in this new law, that authorizes the CCG to take all necessary measures, including the use of weapons to stop infringements and eliminate dangers. And in Article 47 of your law, of this new law, it says it permits, well, more or less, it permits the CCG to use handheld weapons when foreign vessels resist orders from the CCG and other stopping measures fall short. So you were saying, Ambassador, that this is also normal for other countries, but again, upon checking the Philippine Coast Guard law, I never saw anything to this effect that permits our Coast Guard to use handheld weapons or to take all necessary measures, including the use of weapons.
Many countries have enacted such Coast Guard laws, which also stipulate that they are armed force to enforce such a law. And it is also the Coast Guard law of the Philippines in 2009, which established the Philippine Coast Guard law as an armed force and law enforcing agency. So I think that's we don't hope to see any over interpretation of the China Coast Guard law. That's the Coast Guard law of China is aimed at cracking down on those extremely vicious crimes only, and that's is not targeted at any specific country or any specific group of people, and there was no change in terms of the China's foreign policy, and no change in the action of China Coast Guard before or after the formulation of the China Coast Guard law.
But if there will be no change, Ambassador, and if you or the embassy calls this a normal domestic legislative activity of China, my question is, why the need to enact this law? Why the need to pass this new law?
Of course, every country has to regulate their forces, including armed forces, so that they can perform the duty in an orderly way. So I don't think there is any worry about the enactment of this new law.
It's worrying, though, Ambassador. Some senators, in fact, yesterday, the Committee on Foreign Relations, headed by Senator Pimentel, I believe they went on an executive session to talk about a resolution filed by Senator Risa Ontiveros and a statement made. There were two statements made because it seems if China is saying this is not a cause for concern, we have senators saying this is a cause for concern. Let me talk about Senator Richard Gordon. He describes this as a creeping threat that can escalate anytime. That's one. Number two, Senator Tolentino is also worried for the Filipino fishermen because of this new law.
China has been committed in managing differences with our neighbors through peaceful negotiation and consultations. And we have been making every effort in collaboration of our neighbors in this region. And as I said, that the China Coast Guard will not take any strong measure against any fishermen. That's before or after the kind of formulation of this law. Sometimes unnecessary interpretation and reading of such activity, domestic activities of China, is not necessary.
So let us look into the concern of Senator Tolentino. What happens to the fishermen, to the Filipino fishermen, for example, Ambassador, who would want to go to Scarborough Shoal, and the Philippine Coast Guard, rather the Chinese Coast Guard says they need to leave, and then the Filipino fishermen refuse to leave. What happens in a situation like that, granting that there is this new Chinese law?
As I said, there is no need to worry about the very kind of normal enactment of the law and the kind of performance of the duty of Chinese Coast Guards.
Where does the code of conduct come into play now? Wouldn't have the code of conduct have sufficed, or wouldn't that have been adequate had it been finished rather than enacting this new Chinese law?
You mean the code of conduct on the South China Sea?
That's right, Ambassador.
Yes, I used to be the chief of the negotiator for the code of conduct on the South China Sea. And as I understand that the negotiation and consultation is still going on, and the Philippines is playing a very important role in this process. And this is efforts by 11 regional countries to maintain peace and stability in this region. So I believe that kind of the collective wisdom of regional countries will make contribution to maintaining peace and stability in the South China Sea.
I want to go back to the Chinese law, Ambassador. When will it be necessary for the Chinese Coast Guard to fire upon a foreign vessel? What would be an incident where this would actually happen? Because I know you were saying it still remains the same together with the Chinese, with the Filipino fishermen, but when is it going to be necessary, I guess? That's what I want to know.
Pinky, let me say like this. Can you share with me on what occasion and what time did Chinese Coast Guard ever fire at the Philippine fishermen? No, there was no such cases. But instead, Chinese fishermen were shot some years ago. That's in the South China Sea. So I believe that all law enforcement agencies should exercise great restraint in their law enforcing process.
All right. Again, we need to take a very short break. There is, of course, this Chinese survey vessel that recently sought shelter in the waters off Catanduanes due to bad weather. We'll find out more about this after the break. Ambassador Huang Xilian will still be with us. You're watching The Source on CNN Philippines. Our guest today, Chinese ambassador to the Philippines, Huang Xilian. Ambassador, let's talk about this Chinese research vessel, Zhajing. I hope I pronounced it right. Secretary Locsin already tweeted about this, and he did say there was no intrusion. But let's just do a little backtrack on this. I do know that Secretary Locsin said that there was a phone request sometime January 28, if I'm not mistaken, and then the day after was a written request for Zhajing to seek shelter in that area of Catanduanes. Can you tell us more about this? What happened, and when did the Zhajing actually make it towards that part of Catanduanes?
That's it is very normal for a scientific research vessel to seek a humanitarian shelter from a coastal state. And China and Philippines have been rendering assistance to each other on such humanitarian occasions since many years. And Chinese scientific research vessel, have been, doing like this in the past when they encounter, bad sea conditions. And this was another case that when they encounter bad sea condition and bad weather in the Pacific, they tend to request for humanitarian shelter in the Philippine waters. And they did it directly to the Philippine authorities concerned, and later on they also went through, diplomatic channel to seek a kind of clearance and also that kind of agreement for such humanitarian shelter. So I think that's this is what was happening, and they left already on the 1st of February.
Right.
When they found that it seems there are quite a lot of noises here.
This is the same vessel, though, Ambassador, if you can confirm, that was found or also around the northern part of the Philippines last year. Is this the same scientific vessel?
No, I cannot confirm with you on this.
Okay. And where was it going, Ambassador? Where was it headed, the Zhajing?
It is going to the northwest of the Pacific for scientific research.
Northwest of the Pacific. Okay, so it has left that area in the Philippines February 1, and it sought shelter. And there's also another part there, another incident wherein the Philippine Coast Guard actually tried to board the Chinese Coast Guard, but they were refused because of health protocols.
No, there's a lot of speculation, or sometimes in that kind of misreading about what happens.
Mm-hmm.
When they were requested to board on the ship, they didn't turn it down. No problem for them for the boarding. But this is a pandemic, period. What they need is just some measures to prevent COVID, that's infection. And that the Philippine side eventually decided not to board. It's not the Chinese vessel who turned down their request to board.
I see. So it was eventually the Philippine Coast Guard, you're saying, that did not board. So you're saying that the Chinese Coast Guard was eventually going to allow the Philippine Coast Guard to board, but the Philippine Coast Guard did not.
Yes, the Chinese vessel has never turned down the request for any boarding. But what they want is just some kind of, COVID control prevention measures. And they had conducted very close communication with the authorities concerned, including your Coast Guard.
Chinese ambassador to the Philippines, Huang Xilian. Ambassador, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you, Pinky.
And thank you for joining us here on The Source. I'm Pinky Webb. You're watching CNN Philippines.